What is the toughest race in America? Is it a hill climb?
No, the toughest race in America is not a hill climb.
Is it a motocross?
Toughest race in America? Definitely not a motocross.
How about a dirt track? Is that the toughest race in America?
Dirt track? No. Dirt track's not the toughest race in America.
Well then, how about a road race? Could that be the toughest race in America?
I promise you, the toughest race in America is most certainly not a road race.
Well then, what is America's toughest race?
The Blackwater 100 is America's toughest race.
And this is Blackout, the 1993 Blackwater story. Blackout, the story of the 1993 Blackwater 100 is brought to you by KTM Motorcycles, Fun in Motion, ITP, makers of the Whole Shot and Blackwater ATV tires, and ProView prescription goggles, the goggle made to eliminate glasses. 100 years ago, Davis, West Virginia was a budding metropolis. In excess of 3,000 inhabitants found work in coal mines, the logging industry, or in the largest tannery in the state. But the timber ran out and gas replaced coal. The population of the quaint mountain town tumbled to the current number of about 800. The main industry today, tourism. Located in one of the most scenic areas in West Virginia, the Canaan Valley, the city of Davis and the surrounding area is a year-round vacation haven. 51 weeks a year, visitors hike, fish, ski, or just enjoy the scenic countryside. The 52nd week? For the better part of 2 decades, 19 years to be exact, that week belongs to the best off-road motorcycle and ATV racers in the country. That week is reserved for the Blackwater 100, America's toughest race. What makes it so tough? To find out, former 2-time Blackwater winner Scott Summers asked promoter Dave Coombs.
What is the toughest obstacle this year at the 93 Blackwater?
Derelicts.
So there's a lot of spectators out there, and I heard they named a road back there Derelict Drive.
Yeah, Derelict Drive. I think we're going to have to extend it, though.
So there's a lot of people camping along the course. Do you think they're going to have an effect on the riders?
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of, Scott. They're all out, as you know, we didn't mark the course until this morning, so they're all out looking for it. And I'm just afraid that they're going to be in the racers' way when they come through. Hopefully, they'll have sense enough to get off by 1 o'clock. The only problem I see, like I said, is the dust. That's going to give the front riders an advantage in one way, and another running into the people going the wrong direction and water on the track. I've been out there all morning, actually all week, trying to explain to them what's going on. It's a great event. You know, I've been here 19 years, but it's this year it's Summerton, it's insane asylum, and I'm afraid the patients are running it.
Prior to, during, and after the Blackwater weekend, what the patients are running is their own version of Blackwater. Their rules, though, are much simpler than those followed by the actual Blackwater contestants. In fact, there is only one rule, that being, there are no rules. At the water crossings, for example, the objective seems to be who can get the dirtiest. The winners of that contest participate in the finals of Wash Your Buddy. Another popular sport, Dunk Your Girlfriend. On the trail, those that have vehicles establish motorized roadblocks that shift in all directions. But it's back at the campground where the real action takes place. It's where the toughest race fans in America let it all hang out. The dress code is optional, but includes the minimum allowed by law. The official start of the campground contest is when the first spectator arrives. There is no checkered flag. It simply ends when the beer runs out. It's safe to say a huge number of Blackwater fans put partying first and racing second. Like Dave Coombs said, the campgrounds at Blackwater is a giant insane asylum, and the patients have the key. Not far from the mayhem of Derelict Drive are the Blackwater pits. Here, the final preparations for America's toughest race are underway. The Blackwater100 is a two-day event. The first day is devoted to ATVs, all-terrain vehicles, and the second to motorcycles. It matters not, though, to the Blackwater course if you have four wheels or two. The terrain is the same for both, and so are the problems that lie ahead. The veterans, those that have Blackwater experience, know what to expect and how to prepare. Now, in years past, that preparation was for endless miles of mud and deep water. At this year's event, however, there's a whole new set of problems. Dusty trails will make it difficult to see the terrain ahead, while mile after mile of rock sections will take their toll on machinery and bodies. Then there are the thousands of spectators that line the course to help, or on occasion hinder. Scott Summers talked to some of the Blackwater veterans regarding their pre-race thoughts.
Well, I think this year the dust is going to be the worst. We haven't had any rain, the water's down, and the dust is just, I don't care who you are, you can't see, and it's just really frustrating. And, start position is going to be real important, and just having a good, clean ride.
How does this race compare to other races in the series?
Well, actually, it's a lot different. At times I feel it's kind of unfair because you got not only the obstacles of the course, but you've got other obstacles such as humans that consume a little bit too much liquid.
Mark, probably being one of the most well-known Blackwater riders ever, having won the event 4 times, what kind of advice would you give to somebody coming to Blackwater for the first time?
I think the biggest thing is don't get all amped up because of the atmosphere. You got all these people here and all the crowds, and and 500 and some riders, people just go a million off the start, and there's so many obstacles that you can get into and get over your head in a hurry, and it ruins your day real quick.
Describe Blackwater to somebody that's never ridden this event.
Blackwater is just what it says. It's Blackwater. It's a tough, demanding race, and then, like I said, all the name guys show up. For people, first-time riders here, it's going to be a treat for these guys. It's a tough, nasty race, and physical condition, mental condition, and all that's going to come into play. And it's also a fun race. I mean, you see sights here that you'll never see at another race.
The biggest thing is to go out and set a good pace, but not fast enough to break your body or the bike, and then hopefully it's a fast enough pace to be there at the end.
It's hard to say about the spectators. It seems like if you fall down, they're more willing to help you up, but if you don't, they like to see you fall down. So in some cases, I think they're not going to be a help. For some of the riders that fall down and drowned out, maybe they'll drag them out of the water. So.
Your biggest obstacle is not the rocks, it's not the dust, it's not the mud, it's not the other riders, it's the derelicts on the three-wheelers, four-wheelers, and two-wheelers that don't even know a race is going on. They just know you go to Blackwater and raise hell.
After those sage words of advice from Dave Coombs at the riders' meeting, spectators, at least those that knew a race was going on, left Davis to seek the Blackwater course. For Blackwater ATV contestants, it was time to saddle up and head for the start line. And at Blackwater, getting to the start is a contest all in its own. The contestants head in one direction while the spectators head in all directions. Somehow or other, though, it all works out and riders eventually settle into place. When the green flag drops, close to 350 entries will set out to conquer the famed and feared Blackwater course. They are lined up 3 abreast. Each line will be separated by 5 seconds to allow the trail to clear before the next wave drops the clutch. On hand to cheer them on, thousands of spectators. For the most part, each rider is lost in his own last-minute thoughts. Can I survive the water, the rocks, the dust? Can I sneak past those few spectators that hinder and into the clutches of the many that help? And with the drop of the flag, blackout. The 19th annual running of the Blackwater 100 is underway. Starting in the 3rd row is Bob Sloan. Bob has won Blackwater 3 consecutive years and is favored to make it 4 in a row at the 1993 running. As the field heads down the trail, let's listen to the advice Bob has for first-time competitors.
Well, for a first-time rider, I think my best advice would be mentally prepared, as well as the bike being prepared and knowing what to expect out there today. It's really going to be rocky and dusty, and the guy's just going to have to keep going along and set him a pace and hang in there. A lot of people's not going to finish this race today. Flat tires, chains, whatnot. So the best thing to do is just to get out there and get him a good, safe pace going and hang in there.
And with that, the last of 338 ATV riders attack the Blackwater Trail in search of lasting fame, or in some cases, just hoping to make it back to the pits. This portion of Blackwater is brought to you by ITP, makers of the Whole Shot and Blackwater ATV tires. Hours prior to the start of the ATV race, the Blackwater Crazies were positioned at the first major obstacle, the first crossing of the Blackwater River. They came in buggies. They got there on ATVs. Some of them even walked. Regardless, the derelicts were on hand to help and to occasionally hinder. Most of all, though, they came to have a good time. There were coolers full of liquid refreshment, picnic lunches, and for those that were armed, an endless supply of ammunition. Some folks climbed the rocks to get out of the way. Others crowded the crossing to get in the way. Entertainment while waiting was provided by pseudo Blackwater racers. A dam was built to make the water deeper. And as a final thought, after drinking all the beer in his cooler, this guy poured water on the exit point of the crossing. Then there were the 2 engineers that had studied Obstructions 101. They found the biggest rock they could carry and dropped it in the middle of the trail. To grind it all in, a distant cousin of Bigfoot was on hand. A final bath, and the folks from Derelict Drive were ready for the race action to begin. At least some of them were. The rest were still watching the would-be racers in the river when the first riders arrived. The pack was led by Tim Roadheaver, and as if the Blackwater crossing was not enough, spectators splashed Tim as he rode past. Chris Gillette on the other side of the crossing received the same treatment. You'll notice, however, that Gillette did manage a fair amount of revenge. The fifth ATV to enter the river was ridden by three-time winner Bob Sloan. Sporting the number 1 on the front of his machine, Sloan, on the mile of trail leading to the Blackwater River crossing, had already passed 4 riders. Sloan was hung up momentarily in the slippery rocks on the riverbed and in the congestion that had already formed at the crossing exit. But with a little bit of help from a few of the spectators, Sloan was quickly on his way. Behind Sloan, the next few riders made their crossing with minor difficulties. Then the fun, at least for the spectators, was underway. The river turned into what is best described as a dodge 'em ride at the amusement park. The Dodgies were the riders. The Dodgers were well-meaning Blackwater fans. To the first-time Blackwater competitors, the river was about as nasty as anything they had ever encountered. Until, that is, they tried to get up the bank on the other side. Every ATV through the river dripped water on the steep uphill bank. Now, the next ATV ground those drippings in and left a little bit more. Now, that went on and on until the bank became a slippery, snotty mess. Once clear of the river and the slippery bank, a wide-open trail lay ahead. Well, it's not really wide open. There are a few rocks scattered here and there. Rocks that, for the riders that keep up their momentum, are no problem. For those riders that slack off, however, a major problem. But again, the folks from Derelict Drive were on hand to sort things out. They pushed, and they pulled, whatever it took to keep the riders moving. Remember the billings? Blackwater, America's toughest race. Now you know why, and so do the 338 riders that challenged the course in 1993. Blackwater is a mental drain. In those rare moments on the Blackwater Trail when you are not pushing or being pulled out of a water hole, you spend your time thinking about what lies ahead. More to the point, what diabolical trap lies around the next bend. But most of all, according to Blackwater veteran Chris Gillette, Blackwater is a 100% physical drain.
I would say this is the most demanding race you race throughout the year. It's got a 2-hour race, 2.5-hour race. It's constantly rocks, constantly pounding you. You should have been trying to get in shape for this one about 2 months ago.
For some riders, regardless of physical or mental condition, that first water crossing or steep rock section is the end of the line. Water has the unique ability to find its way through a tightly sealed airbox and into the engine, while puncture-proof tires mysteriously go flat. Unbendable handlebars get bent, and leak-proof fork seals leak. Now, given the torture factor already evident at Blackwater, it would appear early retirement from the race would be a blessing. What it really is, though, is a major disappointment.
Well, we come out here, our first time, we had a problem last year getting out here. We come out here and the motor on this thing give out on me, so I had to switch up motors with my old bike day before the race. Then we come out here and it's running like a top, and I burn up the clutch waiting on all this traffic. So we run about a mile, we run good, but we're going home now.
I didn't make it far enough to see. The only thing I can say is, I don't know what to say. I've never experienced anything like this in my life. I broke a lot of trails, but nothing like this. My first time here. Can't believe it. Lost the transmission, 2 miles into the race. Brand new bike. That's the way it goes. I'm happy to be here. It's up! Yeah!
It's on down the trail to one of the most famous obstacles on the Blackwater course, Moon Rocks. There are optional paths that lead to the top of Moon Rocks. Be assured, however, they all share a common trait. It's called Murphy's Law. Whatever can go wrong usually does. Now, for some reason or other, Murphy's Law does not usually apply to the riders at the head of the pack. The back markers are quick to point out those guys are lucky. Have you ever noticed, though, the more you practice, the luckier you get? Murphy's Law usually kicks in at Moon Rocks about 15 minutes after the first rider arrives. Watch. You'll see what I mean. It's a fact that at the first motorsport race ever held, there were no cheaters. It's also a fact that at every race since then, someone has tried to beat the system. For example, accidentally getting lost in the trail and missing an obstacle or two like Moon Rocks. So just past Moon Rocks, there is a secret checkpoint. The checkers, though, have hearts made of forgiveness. In fact, their motto is, if you can figure out how to get here without climbing Moon Rocks, then we'll punch your card. Now, here's a guy with a definite problem. You might say, in fact, the wind has been taken out of his sails, not to mention his right front tire. Flat tires are not an uncommon sight at Blackwater. The sharp rocks on the Blackwater trails and high-speed impacts, such as at Moon Rocks, are the cause. The cure? A road service or a gas station. Unfortunately, those two items are in short supply on the Blackwater Trail. Now, as you have already seen, what is not in short supply are the crazies that haunt America's toughest race, like these two guys that turned a small creek into a mud hole. Fortunately for the Blackwater contestants, there were only a couple in the work crew, and they got a late start. Still, a mud hole is a mud hole, and when it's surrounded by residents from Derelict Drive, chances are it's a nasty mud hole. The spectators here are trying to tell this rider the water is not deep. For once, they were right, but he was tough to convince.
Keep it up. And it's only about that deep, I swear to God. I wouldn't
Now, what the spectators wanted the rider to do was gas it and jump off the bank, like the next couple of riders. Now watch this guy. They want me to go through the middle. Yeah, sure. It's probably 15 foot deep. I'll go to the side. Boy, good thing I didn't go through the middle. Still on the first of 2 laps of the 19-mile Blackwater course, the leaders are about to arrive at the second major water crossing. Notice the varying depth of the water and the unstable footing. Notice also the dam that was constructed in the early morning hours. You'll also notice the derelicts are out in force. Let's watch their antics and the arrival of the first rider as we listen to what the veterans have to say about the water and the spectators in general.
Also, you got to watch out for the spectators because they're wanting to see something happen. They're not wanting to see you get across that water clean. They want to see you drowned out or go over the bars or whatever it may be. So you really got to watch out who you pay attention to and what lines you pick on the course.
The atmosphere here is pretty wild. It's like a circus. If you've ever been to a Rolling Stone concert, it probably is about equal to that, but a little bit more mud.
The biggest thing that surprised me was the first year I was here, I looked at the course before the race, and I saw the creek crossings and stuff, and I didn't really think they were all what they were said to be. The next day when we got to the same place where the water was 6 inches deep, it was 3 feet deep, and they had all built dams over the night and changed the whole course and the crossings, and then they just funnel you right to the spot they want you to attempt to make it. Which, if you give it a good try and you don't make it, they'll help you, so it's okay.
Definitely have to look at them twice and see if they have honesty in their eye, because it can definitely be deceiving.
Down here, you really have to watch the spectators. If you have some spectators that'll really help you, and then some spectators have a can of beer in one hand and a camera in the other. You sure have to watch those ones.
Coming up, a spectator with a can of beer. Now, he's one of the good guys, though, and you'll soon see why. That's Chris Gillette, rider number 11. He's about to get hung up and will solicit help. The spectator that jumps to the task starts to set his beer on the rear fender of Chris's ATV, then he threw it away. Now that move borders on banishment from Derelict Drive. There it is. It's floating off to your left. It must be an empty. No wonder he threw it away. The Blackwater River is about to get busy. Let's watch as some of America's toughest ATV riders handle America's toughest race.
just put a new cam in. I think it broke the timing chain. Other than that, it's great. I'll find out in about 5 minutes.
It's one of the best vacations that's all I could have. It's great. It relieves the tension.
Love it.
Oh, they're crazy, I guess. Is this a party or what?
Man, Blackwater's the best.
Oh, it sucks.
Hey, John. You having fun?
Oh, yeah. Look. 2 drawn out, 8-hour ride, no sleep, feel wonderful.
My ultimate goal is to run 1 lap at Blackwater. That's it. Man, you know what I think of Blackwater? I think it's just one big...
The toughest obstacles on the Blackwater Trail, depending on who you talk to, are the water crossings or the endless miles of rocks. The most dangerous obstacles, however, are found on the wide-open, high-speed trails. Spectators use the same routes as the riders. Needless to say, some of them are not adequately prepared. Like this guy who thinks he's a world champion trials rider. He belongs in a barrel. Or this guy. He's over his head and heading against the flow of traffic. Of course, it's not always the citizens from Derelict Drive that create the roadblocks. On occasion, the competitors themselves are their own worst enemy. Watch this sequence of events. Rider A got crossways on the trail. Rider B was able to squeeze by. Rider C, on the other hand, took a left and was headed in the wrong direction. Now both Rider A and Rider C roll back down the bank, and Rider A gestures. Go ahead, the trail is yours. And so is that hole. Meanwhile, back in Davis, lap number 1 of the 2-lap race is just about history. The first rider through the barrels is 3-time champ and pre-race favorite Bob Sloan. Close behind was Barry Hawk. There were several others in contention, but those two would decide the 1993 championship. The ATV portion of our Blackwater presentation is brought to you by ITP Tires. 130 out of 360 ATV entries rode Blackwater on ITP Hole Shot and ITP Blackwater tires.
Well, the Blackwater racing terrain is different than any other terrain that we have on the circuit in that it has a little bit of everything. Most courses are either rocky or just good traction. This course here, it's just got a little bit of everything. It's got trees, rocks, sand, a little bit of everything, water. And I use a Blackwater tire because of its durability. It lasts, it gives me good traction, and I know that I can rely on it to make it through the race. I choose the ITP Blackwater tires because they are puncture resistant, durable, and provide maximum traction.
The Blackwater has a lot of difficult terrain, a lot of rocks, a lot of mud, and then it just has regular dirt too. And I choose the ITP Blackwater tire because it works well in all this terrain. It's a very durable tire and it'll get you through any situation. I choose the ITP Blackwater tire because they are puncture resistant, durable, and provide maximum traction.
To locate your local ITP tire dealer, call or write Industrial Tire Products. Completing a lap of America's toughest race is in itself an accomplishment. After 20 miles of dust, rocks, and water, can you imagine the relief a rider feels when he sees friendly faces? For riders like Rick Madison, it's an opportunity for repairs that will put him back on the trail for the final lap. For those riders in contention for a Blackwater trophy, getting in and out of the pits as quickly as possible is the name of the game. Time spent dumping gas or in idle conversation is time lost on the trail. For those few contenders, it's gas and go. The rocks, the dust, the deep water, and yes, the derelicts are waiting. For others, completing a single lap of Blackwater will be enough. For the next year or so, their byword will be, been there, did that, and I ain't gonna do it again. Until, of course, next year's event rolls around. Meanwhile, out on the trail, the competition is heating up. Barry Hawk has caught Bob Sloan and is dogging the three-time winner. Hawk started 15 seconds behind Sloan. His time will be adjusted at the finish. He does not have to pass to win. He does, however, have to keep Sloan in sight. Close enough to see the leader's cloud of dust is Steve Holbert. Steve is having a great ride, but unless the lead duo take each other out, Holbert is racing for third. The end of the race is just seconds away. Word of the tight battle has reached the pits. It will be the closest ATV finish in the history of Blackwater. The first rider to appear still going flat out was Barry Hawk. Close behind, Bob Sloan. How fast were they going? Well, the rider trailing them was completing lap number 1. As Barry Hawk and his flock of adoring admirers celebrated victory, other riders were completing the course. Travis Rule would finish third overall, while Steve Holbert came home fourth. The day, though, belonged to Hawk. With a mouthful of mud, Hawk's grin said it all. With the celebration underway, Scott Summers caught up with second-place finisher Bob Sloan.
Do you have any problems out there on the course?
No, not really. Once I got in the lead, I had pretty smooth sailing, and then I made a little mistake back there, and Barry got by me, and then it was really rough from that point on, trying to stay close to him in the dust, and he'd leave me by about 10, 15 seconds, and I'd catch him back in the woods and try to put a move on him, and then it never worked. I tried 4 or 5 times that last lap. I knew I had to put a little bit of time on him, and it just didn't work out.
Congratulations on the third place ride. How did everything go out there?
Well, it went pretty good the first lap. I was right with Barry and Bob. We was all pretty much together until the river crossing right down here. I got across that and I figured out how to rear flat.
Barry, you overcame all the obstacles today. Can you tell us what the course was like out there?
Yeah, it's you know, dusty in places, then it was really muddy in places, but spectators were really bad on the last lap. They just wouldn't get out of the way, but yell and yell, and then they finally move out of the way. And I guess I like the track this time.
Looked like Bob Sloan finished about 2 seconds right behind you. So you came pretty close to Bob early in the race, and did you have to follow his dust? Can you remember exactly where you passed him for the last time?
Yeah, the first time, I only passed him one time. Going up the power line, I followed him through all the river crossing, rocks up through there, and I just thought, I got to get around him. I'm tired of eating his dust. And there was 2 ways. There was a rough way to the left and a smooth way to the right, and he went to the right, and I just held on the gas, held it wide open up through the rough stuff, and we side by side, but I had the straight line because he had to cut back onto the rough stuff, and I just had straight line, and he had to let off.
The ATV portion of Blackout, the story of the 1993 Blackwater 100, was brought to you by ITP Tires. From ITP, congratulations to Barry Hawk, 1993 ATV winner, and to all the competitors that took on America's toughest race. Still to come on Blackout, the best off-road motorcycle racers in the country. The motorcycle portion of Blackwater is brought to you by KTM Motorcycles, Fun in Motion, and ProView, the goggle for those that wear glasses. But before we watch the Motorcycle Riders Challenge America's Toughest Race, let's check in on America's toughest fans as they challenge the Blackwater Party. The pits that just one day ago were filled with ATVs are now crammed to capacity with motorcycles. More than 500 of them are entered in the 19th annual Blackwater event. Before it's over, more than one rider will comment to his pit crew, "You know, there must be at least another 500 riders on the trail that are not entered." The same obstacles that face the ATV riders await those that ride on two wheels. And like the ATV class, a limited number of highly skilled competitors will challenge those obstacles in search of Blackwater fame. For Blackwater contestants, it was time to head for the start line. Scott Summers met them there to get their final thoughts.
Tommy, what's it feel like to have such a good draw being on the front row?
It's excellent. Can't get any better than this.
Who do you think is going to be your toughest competitor out there?
I think Randy's going to be tough today, and so's Dwayne, and Mark Hyde's always right there, and he's on the front row.
Blackwater 100, you've been here before. What are you thinking about right now, being on the front row?
I think it'd be nice to be out front, out of the dust, you know, and then ride smart early and be close when the checkered flag comes down. Make it count then.
Good luck.
Thanks now.
Let's walk down. A great draw. You're on the front row. What's it feel like?
You know what? Hey, you know, all the people here and all the yelling, it's a great feeling to be here, but a little nervous too, because I know I got some fast guys coming behind me. I hope being up front with the dust is going to come to my favor. But hey, I'm just going to go try to ride my own race and see how it goes.
Jeff, you're in the second row. You finished second overall last year. What are you thinking about right now?
Just hopefully don't do nothing stupid going out the power line road. It's going to be real dusty, and just try to get a good consistent pace, and then when it clears out, hopefully pick up the pace a little bit. But this first few miles is going to be real tough.
Larry, you're in the second row. You got to feel good about that. There's probably 500 some odd riders behind you, so you're in a good spot already. What are you thinking about right now?
Well, I tell you, there's 5 good riders in front of me, and there's 4 good riders next to me, and there's about another 20 guys behind me. It's really hot, humid, muggy. I think it's going to be a really tough day.
Fred, you never won the Blackwater. This is your first time ever. What are you thinking about right now?
I'm thinking if it's my first try, I might as well go out there and win it the first time and see what happens. No, really, I'm just concentrating on making it through the first lap without having too much difficulty and trouble, and see where I'm at and take it from there.
The motorcycle portion of Blackout, the story of the Blackwater 100, is brought to you in part by ProView prescription goggles. We'll return for the start of the race after this message from ProView.
For over the years, people ask me about Blackwater all the time. And, you know, to start out, I mean, you got to have a good bike, good equipment, everything you need to ride Blackwater. You got to be mentally tough, physically tough, because it's such a long, demanding race. You can't come in here half prepared. You know, so I make sure my bike's really prepared, good tires. And one of the biggest questions I've had over the years is how do I see? Because Blackwater, you know, is known for its mud, its rocks, its water crossing, the rain. Yeah, for people like me who have vision problems, you know, there's a lot of things that I had to do in the past to make it so I could get through a race like this. I wasn't able to maybe follow somebody as close, so I had to really pick and choose my spots to pass. I had to be real careful at water crossings and, you know, and mud crossings. But now since I've switched to ProView goggles, I mean, it's made me a lot more competitive. It's let me take chances where before I'd have to wait for an opportunity to appear. And now, you know, I can go as hard as I can right from the start, and I don't have to worry about, you know, constantly keeping my glasses clean. Yeah, one of the nice things about the ProViews is your prescription is actually inside the outer lens. So that way when you encounter water and mud and, you know, branches or rocks that could scratch the outside lens, you're not going to get any of the water and mud on the inside. So that way you can give your roll off a quick tug, and again, you have clear vision and it never affects the inside lens. I tell you, I see people riding around and they take their goggles off because they can't see, or they pull their glasses down, and you only get one set of eyes. And by wearing these, it just makes you feel so much more confident when you're racing, because you know you can always have clear vision, and it just makes racing so much easier. I mean, they've eliminated a lot of headaches and hassles that I had to put up with you know, non-perfect vision. I would highly suggest to anyone with vision problems to give ProView goggles a call at this toll-free number.
To order your special prescription goggles, call or write ProView prescription goggles. On the outskirts of Davis, West Virginia, for the 19th consecutive year, the field, over 500 strong, is set for America's toughest race, the Blackwater 100. 5 rider waves, over 100 of them, 5 seconds apart, head down the Blackwater Trail. For a limited number of the Iron Horse mounted combatants, victory could be a reality. Most of the field, though, were there, well, because it's Blackwater. It's the place to be on Father's Day. Finish the 4-lap race before the checkered flag is thrown, and bragging rights are yours for years to come. Each lap, 19 miles of trail, water, mud, rocks, more rocks, and, oh yes, don't forget the dust. Not far out of Davis, just a mile in fact, the riders will encounter the first major obstacle of the day, the Blackwater River. The course was not marked until the morning of the race, the intent to minimize the number of spectators on the trail and at the river crossings. Now, not many of the derelicts that haunt the Blackwater trails were fooled. Somehow or other, they all found their way. Speculation was a large part of the huge crowd on hand were left over from last year's Blackwater event. They arrived early to gain the best vantage points. To prepare for the activities ahead, massive quantities of liquid libation were consumed. To amuse themselves while waiting for the riders, impromptu games were organized that included water yo-yo. Show your girlfriend a really good time. Wash the mud from your ATV. And shoot the crowd a bird. The first rider to cast his eyes on the Blackwater River was 1990 winner Tommy Norton. The 125cc Kawasaki rider took no chances. Water at the Blackwater River is not the problem. The problem is under the water. The riverbed is a field of rocks ranging from softball to bowling ball size. Through the years, the swift Blackwater current has worn down the points and crevices, turning the rocks into a slippery, uneven bed with virtually no traction. Caution is the key word of the day. Jan Rehor found that out the hard way. Behind Jan, Enduro star Randy Hawkins was quick to pounce and moved into second place. Then came Mark Hyde, rider number 5. Dwayne Connor, number 4, followed by KTM rider Jeff Russell. He's number 9, also capitalized on Jan's mistake. Fred Andrews in the middle of the river, number 207, narrowly avoids a mid-river collision that could have ended his day. Meanwhile, the Blackwater fun was about to get underway. The veterans and better riders at the head of the pack cleared the Blackwater River with minimal problems. Now, the riders that followed had less experience and less ability. They found more than their share of problems in the river and out. Keep in mind, every cycle that left the river dripped water on the bank. The next cycle in line ground that water in and dripped some more. That too was mixed in and on and on and on. As a result, after 100 or so riders have crossed, the exit point resembles a slippery, gooey mess. You want some advice? Right up front with the experts. Here's another problem common on the Blackwater Trail: impromptu machinery surgery. By now, the Blackwater River resembles a busy day at Disneyland. The spectators get closer and closer to the action, and the riding corridor narrows. Not to worry, though, by now the spectators are part of the game. They push, they pull, whatever it takes. The folks from Derelict Drive are all wet, but they're not all bad. Now, you might wonder if the spectators stayed out of the way, would the crossing be easier on the riders? Doubtful. Quite frankly, some of the riders should not be there either. Like any organized mob, there is a leader. At the Blackwater crossing, he directs traffic. Now, you have to make a quick decision. Do you trust him or not? The less favored positions for spectator helpers is on the riverbank itself. They manhandle the machines in the gooey mud. Like their counterparts in the water, they tug, push, and pull, but they face the danger of flying motorcycles. Now here's a rider with a fresh approach to getting up the slippery bank. No problem, assuming, of course, you can find 10 or so strong backs and weak minds. Meanwhile, the leaders are nearing another feared Blackwater obstacle. This one is known simply as moon rocks. A quick look at the surface tells you all you need to know. The spectators at Moon Rocks consider themselves more sophisticated than those at the river crossings. They'll tell you they're interested in the technical aspects of riding. My guess is they couldn't find the water. The first bike through was the 125cc Kawasaki ridden by Tommy Norton, the 1990 Blackwater winner. Close behind, Randy Hawkins, the multi-time national enduro champion, aboard his Suzuki. The third rider through was last year's Blackwater runner-up, KTM-mounted Jeff Russell. Jeff had a minor problem when he bounced off a moon rock and almost went down. He was saved by another rock, and with the help of a couple of men on the moon, he was quickly underway. Fred Andrews, who had worked up to the number 4 position, had no problems with the rocks. The former pro motocrosser was catching on to cross-country racing. Here's another pro motocrosser, Ty Davis on a Kawasaki. Right behind, his teammate, Larry Rossler. Rossler, a many-time Baja winner, learned his trade in the desert. For Rossler, rocks are not a problem. Coming up, Mark Hyde and Scott Plessinger. They arrive at the same place at the same time and both come to a screeching halt. Scott says, "Go ahead, Mark." Now you know why Mark Hyde is a 4-time Blackwater winner. Scott, on the other hand, made a rare mistake. He lost his momentum. When he got going again, he was out of his line, had to improvise. I'll bet the next time around, Scott will pick a different line. Now watch the Suzuki rider. He'll demonstrate the classic technique, one wheel in one rut, the other wheel in a different rut. Not the way to do it. Next, for those of you that are would-be Blackwater riders, the proper technique for getting up rocks. And how not to get up rocks. You don't get off and push like you do in the river. The key again to moon rocks is momentum. You say you want more examples of how to and how not to do it? Well, let's watch the styles of a few of the Blackwater competitors. That was how not. And that was how. And here's another how, while the first how not continues to struggle. Here's a rider with a how to and a how not to all in the same ride. Now here are two riders that choose different lines. Unfortunately for the rider that goes to the far right, they'll end up with different results. Now here's a first-time Blackwater competitor. You can tell because he's asking for help from a spectator with a beer in his hand.
You go up there about 10 feet, you hang a hard left, no problem, you can do it, you're the best, it's easy.
The spectator, his job done, turns and walks away, but the rider is still not sure. "Show me one more time," he says.
Okay, you go up the hill, you take a hard left, just don't stop.
Confused? Well, here comes more help.
Watch that guy, go where he goes.
Well, despite the demonstration and words of advice, the rider picks his own line with predictable results. He gets hung up. Spectators can sometimes be trusted. Most of them, in fact, are helpful souls. But all the spectator can do is offer advice and words of encouragement. That sometimes is not enough. This Kawasaki rider has been given the options, off to the right or off to the left. Go straight up. He opts for the hill. Then for some reason or other, he opts to roll back down the hill. Down the trail, check out the dam built by a few of the derelicts. They got here early in the morning when this river was nothing more than a creek. To be sure they have done their job, the river has to be tested. How deep is the water? How slippery are the rocks? A test rider is sent to find out. No problem at all. We'll see when the competition arrives. Well, how do you like Blackwater so far?
Love it. Better than Christmas.
First riders are just about due at this, the second river crossing of the 1993 Blackwater. The river is clear of spectators. They have formed a channel by lining both sides of the crossing. All they do now is wait. The first rider in view, it's Tommy Norton aboard the 125. It seems all but impossible that Norton has held off the charges of the bigger board machines behind him. Again, Norton takes the safe way through the water. As Norton disappears from view, Randy Hawkins, a scant few seconds behind, hits the river. Hawkins, an national enduro champion, is familiar with riding water. He stays on his Suzuki and makes up valuable time. Jeff Russell, the KTM rider looking for his first Blackwater win, turns in an even better river ride. In fourth and fifth are the professional motocrossers Ty Davis and Fred Andrews. Word from the trail is Andrews had worked all the way to third, then suffered a hard crash on one of the high-speed sections. He got up a little sore, but the bike was not damaged. Andrews dropped a couple of positions, but is still in contention. Larry Rossler and Dwayne Connors were the next riders into the river. No problem for Rossler, but off to the side, Connors found a hole and tipped over. Mark Hyde slowed to avoid running into Connors, while Doug Blackwell gassed it up and passed them both. For Connors, the untimely crash spelled the end of his hopes for the win. Pushed from the river, it took Connors a few minutes to restart his Husky. At this point, as riders start to file by, the frustration felt by Connors can only be imagined. He was doing so well. Among the leaders, Connors, if it had not been for that slight error that put him down, might have turned in the ride of a lifetime. Finally, he gives up. He'll push the Husky out of the water and up the trail. Behind him, the action picks up as the front end of the mass of Blackwater riders hits crossing number 2.
Once in a lifetime.
At the start-finish area, Tommy Norton is the first rider to complete lap number 1. Tommy's number is recorded. He then heads to where his pit crew is standing by. The 125 Tommy is riding cannot make 2 laps on a single tank of gas. So not only is Norton down on power due to the size of his machine, but valuable time will be lost at the end of every lap. And here's Randy Hawkins aboard a 250. He'll stop only if he needs repairs to his bike or body. Norton is off, but he's passed by Hawkins. Jeff Russell is the third rider in. He'll take the KTM through the barrels and continue down the trails without stopping. Fred Andrews' pit crew apparently will gas Fred. It could be Fred's machine drinks a lot of gas, or it could be a precautionary measure. This is Fred's first Blackwater, but it's not unfamiliar territory to his crew. Both his father and brother have recorded excellent finishes at Blackwater. Like Norton, Andrews pays the price of stopping. He's passed by Ty Davis. Andrews is off after losing at least 15 seconds. Other riders will follow Andrews' lead. The rationale is, why take a chance? For the most part, they realize an overall win is out of the question at this stage of the race. Had they been closer to the front, they might not have stopped. While in the pits, most riders will get clean goggles or even a new pair of gloves. Four-time winner Mark Hyde is running off the pace set by the leaders. It was reported Hyde was ill prior to the start of the race. It's questionable how long Hyde will continue to ride. For some riders, pit stops are more than a formality. They are a necessity. Flat tires, failing brakes, new levers, bent rims are just a few of the problems experienced on the trail. They need to be fixed to continue. For Terry Cunningham, the plan was to run up front and bypass the first pit stop. When Terry did not appear with the leaders, the Team Green crew knew he had a problem and more than likely would stop for repairs. For some riders, problems similar to those experienced by Cunningham would bring to a halt the day's riding. Terry, though, had no intention of quitting. He's a former champion and refuses to give up.
Oh, they didn't?
No, we ain't got in yet, buddy. What happened, Terry?
Oh, I had to push through both rivers.
Why?
The bike was just dying. I'd get halfway through.
Well, it didn't take much.
There.
And, it'd die. So I'd get to the other side and had to kick it, get it started. That took a couple minutes each time.
In the KTM pits, noted desert racer Scott Harden had also stopped. Note the grin beaming from under Harden's helmet and the smiles on the faces of some members of the pit crew. Harden is telling them, I've never seen anything like this in my life. It's a long way from the desert and I'm having a ball. Has increased his lead slightly over Tommy Norton. In the tough, rocky terrain and the tight parts of the course, Norton is able to maintain the pace. However, there are some high-speed sections. Norton's 125 is no match for Hawkins' 250. Fred Andrews has passed both Ty Davis and Fred Russell to take command of third place. Another rider that has moved up in the standings is Doug Blackwater. Fresh from a win at Baja, Larry Rossler too has picked up the pace. And despite his illness, Mark Hyde continues to hang tough. Jeff Russell was third at the end of the first lap. The KTM rider had problems at one of the river crossings on lap number 2 and had a lot of ground to make up. For the leaders, the Blackwater Trail is difficult, but they take it in stride. For the back markers, though, it's like, well, it's a Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's bad, but it won't go away. Now watch this guy. He's riding along in complete control when all of a sudden he finds himself on the ground. Not to worry, the derelicts materialize to help, or maybe to put on him the kiss of death. Watch what happens when he gets going again. Is that embarrassing or what? Unless you think that tough rocky trails are problems for a limited few, here's just a sample from a short uphill that's typical of the Blackwater Trail. For most, it's a bad day at Bad Rock. Back at the finish, the leaders have completed lap number 2. Mark Hyde is coming in, and we'll call it a day. In the KTM pit, Scott Plessinger has also dropped out. Scott Summers talked to the two riders.
Scott Plessinger, he was doing really well overall, one of the pre-race favorites. Can you tell us what happened out there, Scott?
The front end didn't want to stay under the bike all day, and I hit a rock. I was following Mark Hyde and in the dust, and I hit a rock and kicked the front end out from under me, and I tweaked my knee pretty good. And I'd come in, and I decided to go out and try to make another lap. And after I went through the first water crossing, I was going down through there, and I hit another rock, and it spit me off pretty good. So I decided to call it to quits after that.
Mark, this is into the second lap. Can you tell us what happened out there?
I just been sick all week, and I just making a lot of mistakes and having a hard time getting going, and so the course is so tough out there. I end up doing something I'd regret later if I kept pushing it, but just can't make nothing happen right now.
Is there a lot of dust on the course?
The first lap was really bad. Since then, it's gotten a lot better. We've gotten strung out. If you can get in the woods, okay, but still, this lap, now we're getting into lap traffic, and it's getting bad again. I miss those bogs.
A short time later, the leaders put lap number 3 in the book. Randy Hawkins, who took the lead at the end of the opening lap, maintained control. Hawkins, though, had experienced a minor problem that needed correcting. His shift lever was bent and needed straightening. There was no time for a replacement, so the crew bent it back into shape and hoped it wouldn't break. The Team Green pit crew waited for Tommy Norton. At last report, the 125cc rider was about 25 seconds behind Hawkins. Now, Norton is sponsored by the Ninja Turtles. While they were not on hand, their spirit was. A splash of gas and a little turtle food, and Norton was set for the last lap. Less than a minute behind Norton came Fred Andrews. He was gassed and out of the pits in near record time. The Blackwater charge was underway. Blackout. The story of the Blackwater 100 is brought to you in part by KTM Motorcycles. After this short message, we'll return for the exciting conclusion of the 19th running of Blackwater.
Hi, I'm Jeff Russell, 1991 AMA National Enduro Champion. I ride for KTM Sport Motorcycle. Enduro racing is long-distance enduro riding, usually 100 to 150 miles in length. We could go over various terrains, rocky, water. That's why it calls for a good, dependable motorcycle. When it comes to dependability, I choose KTM. Same bike you can get at the KTM dealerships, just like mine. It's fine-tuned to my specifications, but everything's available through your dealership. When it comes to dependability, nothing works better than a KTM.
Hi, my name's Scott Plessinger. I'm AMA National Hare Scramble Champion. I ride for KTM. I've ridden KTMs for the past 3 years. They took me to the National Championship last year, and they're a good, dependable motorcycle that you can buy in your own KTM dealership. As far as I'm concerned, they're the most reliable motorcycle. I've ridden a lot of motorcycles in the past 8 years that I've been racing, and as far as reliability, KTM's the most motorcycle. As far as KTM, I've never had a mechanical DNF in the last 2 years of riding them. Basically, the DNFs have come on my behalf if I had crashes or other things have happened, but as far as mechanical problems, I've never had a mechanical problem with KTM in the past 2 years. You can get the same KTM motorcycle that I ride, and I won the AMA National Hare Scramble Championship on at your local KTM dealer.
To find the KTM dealer nearest you, call KTM. The last lap of Blackwater 100 is near completion. Word from the trail is Fred Andrews caught and passed Tommy Norton, and when last seen was closing on race leader Randy Hawkins. The rider should be here any second. The Andrews pit crew is jumping up and down, and there's the reason why. Fred Andrews, on his first attempt, has captured the 1993 Blackwater 100. Andrews was at least 1 minute and 15 seconds behind Hawkins at the start of the last lap. And here's Hawkins. This is one of the tightest finishes in the 19-year history of Blackwater. And there's Tommy Norton. He led the first lap and was in second at the start of the last lap. He was passed by Andrews and finished third. A spectacular ride for the Ninja Turtle 125 and Tommy Norton. Scott Summers is standing by to talk to Fred Andrews. Let's go to the pits.
Place went up to fourth, to third, and first in the last lap. How's it feel to finally win the Blackwater?
Well, I came here and told you, you might as well come here once, you might as well win it, so I won it.
That's awesome.
Wish you could have been out there to see what we could have done, but really they say it's the toughest race. It is tough, but you just got to be smart and pick your lines good. And as long as you don't fall down and keep going smooth, I think that's what happened. I just caught him and I just kept on being smooth. Didn't try too hard and didn't get overtired.
You passed Randy on the last lap. Do you remember where you did that? About what mile marker?
I passed him probably about the 3rd or 4th mile marker. Well, after the second crick, I got right behind him. Then I passed him, then he passed me back, and I passed him, and then I got to the open section. I just pinned it. I didn't think he could stay with me.
How's it feel to come to Blackwater for the first time and win overall?
Feels great. I'd like to thank all my sponsors, Yamaha, Hammerhead Graphics, Answer, Dunlap, Smith, Weisco, and 100%. There's a ton of them, but man, without them, I couldn't do it.
Came up a little bit short on the final 4th lap.
Yeah, you know, the 3rd lap I been a shift just a little bit, but not bad. And basically Fred beat me. You know, I don't have no excuses. He rode better. He's a better man to me. But I would want to bet him, let him go to the next National Enduro. Let's have a 2 out of 1. I'll race him there, no doubt.
Awesome performance by Randy Hawkins. You've never really won a national cross country. I'd say today you came closer than any time in your career.
Yeah, you know, I rode good. And one other thing I'd say, you know, a lot of guys think the Enduro guys were just Enduro riders, but I hope today I showed that we can do more than just Enduros.
I think you proved that very well. Congratulations.
Thanks, Scott.
Tommy, you were riding really well. Do you remember exactly where you lost the lead?
I came into the barrels the first lap, and I have to gas every lap because of the amount of mileage. If it was just a little less, I could have gone 2 laps. Pulled into the pit. When they were putting my gas cap on, Randy went by me, so we went out together, and I couldn't get by him in that first corner. We got out on the first big road. He was just dusting me out. I couldn't get around him because of the dust. I almost crashed a couple times, and when I got to the river, he was already through it and up over the hill. I never saw him again after that.
So you're running the 125, which meant you had to stop every lap to get gas. The other guys didn't have to do that, so did that prove to be a little bit of a disadvantage?
Sure did. I don't know how much I lost by, but I don't think it was much. I must have lost 30 seconds in the pit today compared to everybody else. So it definitely came into play.
So then once Randy got around you, do you remember what happened when Fred Andrews got around?
Yeah, it was on the big hill on the power lines, and uphill it's pretty smooth, but my bike could only pull 5th on that hill, and Fred just came motoring by me, turned his head right around, he's like, see you later, and off he went. I couldn't catch him on the big uphill, and he was gone.
And so ends the 19th annual running of America's toughest race, Blackwater 93. Blackout, the story of the 1993 Blackwater 100, is a moto video production brought to you by ProView Prescription Goggles, KTM Motorcycles, and ITP Tires. Special thanks to our pit reporter Scott Summers and Dave Coombs of Racer Production, the organizers of Blackwater. From all of us, I'm Larry Myers. We'll see you next year.